can get across to us by sending a message on WhatsApp. Number is 0809 440 You can also tweet at Smooth981 on Twitter. And we are streaming live on Facebook. That's Smooth.
Down to 85. Okay, wait, I'm coming out.
And Ayo. And our analysts this morning, we have with us Joseph Obari and Ikemesit Effioong. Very good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning. Great to be with you again. Morning, Lagos.
Good morning,
Good
Joseph.
morning, Lagos. Good morning, everybody in the studio. It's good to be here again.
All right, let's get started with the stories from a story in the Punch newspaper. Now, barely 18 days to the end of the regime of President Muhammadu Buhari, the federal government has approved 459 billion naira in contracts to consultant firms.
I'm struggling to hear you. I don't know why.
Okay, let's come closer. Barely 18 days to the end of the regime of the president of the current administration, the federal government has approved 459 billion naira in contracts to consulting firms. This better, Joseph.
Okay, well, for me, I don't understand it, but you know that the ministers try to justify it by saying that, oh, it's a continuum, government's a continuum. You know, contracts awarded now can always be important and so on. I think that, well, most Nigerians know why these things happen when contracts are given. Why? What is that go behind them? Otherwise, I don't see what it aims to achieve to award contract worth this amount, almost half a billion naira in. Sorry, am I wrong? I'm saying half a billion. No, 500. You know. So in just 18 days. So what's supposed to be achieved? But well, the argument is that government is a continuum. So contracts are awarded, the lifespan of the contract still exists even after this administration. So we just hope that some of those projects are important projects, like the search and rescue for the ports, for example, looks like an very important contract. But as to the propriety of this, honestly, most people, we put a question mark around this, and I do somehow.
Ikemesit?
Joseph is largely right. I think for me, it's if you look at the three contracts that are involved, right, the fire service search and rescue vans, which are supposed to be procured for some of the nation's biggest ports, has a completion time of 9 months, right? The Kano Maradi standard gauge rail and procuring rolling stock for that rail line, which, if you remember, I think the Federal Executive Council approved just last year. It's actually supposed to take 4 years. Right, yeah, and that's actually a contract that's denominated in dollars. It's about $984.7 million. Then the construction of almost 200 flats for personnel of the National Drugs Law Enforcement Agency. Yeah, it's also, there was actually no time frame that was attached to that. So these are relatively long-term contracts. All of these procurement lives will outlive the life cycle of this administration. So, like Joseph said, there's something to be made to the point about whether it's appropriate for a lame duck outgoing administration to commit an incoming administration, which will be inheriting some of the biggest, debt commitments that the Nigerian government has had, right, in a while. Revenue lines are pressured. We spend 97% of all the revenue we generate on debt services. There's something to be said about whether that kind of government should be committed to this sort of long-term contracts. But even though government is a continuum, the next government has the prerogative to actually say, no, we are not going to do this. One of the first things actually that President Buhari did when he came into office was to actually check off or was to actually cancel a couple of contractual commitments which the previous administration has made. I will not be surprised if that happens with some of these contracts, right? Post May 29.
All right, let's move on to our next story here. That is from the Punch newspaper. Now, the Bauchi State Sector Commander of the Federal Road Safety Corps, Mr. Yusuf Abdullahi, is advocating the application of Sharia law to prosecute traffic offenders to stem road crashes in the country.
Joseph, can you hear Ayo?
Very friendly.
All right, let me take that again.
But I know it's
Bauchi
the second. It's the second story on the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So on the real. So yeah, it's okay. But it was quite low.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I don't know. This one seems quite ridiculous. I mean, the reason the sector commander gave for advocating subjecting traffic rules to Sharia is because the present punishments are not stiff enough. Then we're talking about traffic offenses. How stiff do you want it to be? You should start cutting people's limbs or what? So, you know, this kind of thing, I think the commander needs to be called to order. But it's a free society, it's free to express its opinion. But this kind of opinion that borders on religious interest in application of a matter like traffic offense, it's very worrisome. I would say it is worrisome. And the reason given for it that, oh, it is not stiff enough, is what is source of worry, because we know how Sharia has been implemented in states that have adopted Sharia over years. According to the extant laws guiding road crashes are not stiff enough, hence the need for the introduction of the Sharia law in traffic rules.
But Joseph,
you know,
looking at the extant laws, are they even being enforced properly? You even say, oh, we're enforcing the laws, but they're not even doing what they're supposed to do. Are they even being enforced properly?
That's the question. I mean, even the implement, yeah, to a large extent, road safety has been very forward in implementation of road rules. And because if you're committing an offense, they cite you, you go to pay the fine in the bank using remitter, and then you go to the office to prove of payment and all of that. So fines are meant to actually be a deterrent to people, and all over the world, these are principles for traffic offenses. Traffic offenses are not criminal in that sense. They are not of criminal offenses in that sense in which you want to apply the law rules of criminal justice for traffic offenses, you know.
Yeah, Joseph, you did speak about him having the freedom to air his thoughts, but when the person represents a government organization like the FRSC, are their expressions or their thoughts solely theirs, or do they in some way represent the organization?
The expression, I mean, in that capacity, speaking officially, because he is an official of government, and that's why I say he needs to be called to order, because it's wrong. It is very, very wrong. I don't know what Ikemesit, what do you think about this?
So to fair, I know that he's in his capacity somewhat as I think he's the Bauchi State FRSC commander. But a couple of things that we should note, right? First and foremost is that Sharia law is part of the law. He's necessarily asking for a radical adoption of something that we don't have, much experience with. But your larger point, I think, in the end is which that road traffic offenses are minor offenses at best. Our criminal law does kick in for serious offenses that involve conduct on the road. So, for example, if you cause bodily harm or if your conduct on the road leads to death and all that stuff, then criminal law does apply. if it happens in a place like Bauchi State, there are actually aspects of Sharia law with respect to criminal law that must apply, right? And that Sharia law enforced in Bauchi State. So one could already make the argument that, Sharia law does have, a thing or two to say, right, in terms of how traffic offenses are managed in the state. It might be the case that he doesn't know the law well enough. He doesn't understand his remit extensively enough for him to be making comments like this, or like like I was telling Ayo and Zibby just before we came on, he has just seen too much shady in recent times, right? In terms of managing the traffic
Stress.
situation in Bali, and he was just rushing. So it could be any of those options.
Okay, let's go on to WhatsApp and look at some of the messages coming through. Dami says the rush to spend money in the last days is worrying. Will the next administration come in and claim it won't perform simply because the current one has spent all the money? Toye says traffic offense is a criminal offense. Godwin says, okay, Godwin, we're going to come back to your message shortly, but let's go on to the next message.
Yes, on to the next message here. This is from Premium Times newspaper. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Health, Ibrahim Urebe, has said he is hopeful that President Muhammadu Buhari will assent to the Public Health Emergency Bill before he leaves office on the 29th of May.
Right. Yes. So Senator Urebe is the APC senator that represents Kwara Central constituency. Interestingly, he did not win his re-election. So he was a freshman senator elected in 2019, didn't win his, I'm saying he didn't win his re-election. He didn't win his party primary to begin with. So he didn't make it right to the election. So because of that, I find some of it interesting. Maybe this is sort of a legacy building thing for him. The second thing I want to note about this before we go into the details of what's contained in the bill is that this bill is actually sponsored by another senator who is a PDP senator. So it's quite interesting, sort of the contrast between how the bill originated and how far it's come. So what's the public health emergency bill important? Now, the conversations that led to the introduction of this actually date back to COVID and the height of the pandemic here in Nigeria. And currently, the law enforced that we have that manages how the country deals with emergencies is 96 years old. It's called the Quarantine Act.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and it's one of the small gifts that the British give to us, right? In their time as, our colonial rulers. We have only adjusted that act in almost a century. It makes complete, absolute sense, right, for us to bring the law more like the realities that we're dealing with in the 21st century. And that's why the public emergency bill, right, has been brought, has advanced to the point where it has now. It's also worth mentioning that, this is work that's going on right in the Senate. The House of Representatives has the control of infectious disease bill that it's all considered, and it's making its way through the lower house. So at some point, both houses have to sit down and sort of rationalize both bills. They basically to do the same thing. But the general thinking around this is right. And if anything, in order to connect this to the first story, we're having a conversation around last minute spending. These are some of the priorities that I would like for the presidency and for the federal executive to actually pay attention to. Yeah. These things are more like the Nigeria is dealing with, a number of public health, right, emergencies that require, us properly understanding what are federal priorities, what are state priorities with respect to how we manage, the health crisis in this country, because health is a shared responsibility between federal, state, and even local governments, right, in Nigeria and all of these things. And so some of these laws that would help clarify how we allocate resources, what agencies will be responsible for coordinating and marshalling those resources? When does an emergency get escalated to where we should be to put funding and we should begin to, generally update the public on how to take care of themselves? These are some of the things that, the Buhari administration should be making happen. And now in the closing stages of the administration, and not just committing us to spending, more money on things that we may not see for years and years to come.
Absolutely. All right, thank you for that, Ikemesit.
I think there is an aspect of this health emergency that I don't know. I'm not privy to the details of this act, which is the interventionist aspect of health emergency, where people can call for help. And I don't know if they address that part, because that's a critical service that is missing in Nigeria at all. So public health emergency shouldn't just stop with emergency managing infectious disease, which this bill seems to focus on. But there's a critical element in like ambulance services and all of that I don't think that they are addressed here. And if there is a missing aspect of this act, then something is wrong.
All right, thank you for that, Joseph.
It looks like I might leave you guys here. I have a flight to catch, and
all right. Well, thank you so much, Joseph.
I thought I could run to the end, but apparently I can't.
We understand, and thanks you so for much. Your time.
You're in good hands. I'm sure Ikemesit will do justice to all of this. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Have a safe flight, Joseph.
Safe travels.
Yeah.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Do stay with us. The show continues. Yep.
They're saying that the laws are not stiffer. Can't you make the laws stiffer without bringing Sharia law into it? So what are you going to do? What does the singers?
I can't think of it. Does Sharia law apply to people who are not Muslims? It shouldn't, right? Because if you're not Muslim, you're not bound by the law.
Well, if you're living in a slave country where
you're right, Zibby. With respect to Sharia criminal law, you basically need to be Muslim. You have to be the operative legal terms. You have to be subject, right, to it. So the Supreme Court cleared that up quite years ago. So if you're a Christian in a state where Sharia law applies, you're mostly exempt from it. Yeah.
Okay.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1 with Zibby and Ayokunmi. Effioong is with us. He's our analyst this morning. Let's get back into the news stories. Yeah.
All right, and let's move on to this story that comes from the Daily Trust. Now, the chairman of the Cross River chapter of the Trade Union Congress has disclosed that no civil servant in the state was promoted by the Ayade-led administration in the last 7 years.
Yes. So the TUC chairman, right, in Cross River State, just trying to pick up his name, Monday Obodu, right? Yeah. Yes. Said that basically Ayade in his 8 years has barely promoted anyone, right, within the state civil service. Salaries haven't been paid regularly. The last time retirees, received their gratuities was in 2014, which, if you're doing the math, actually predates Ayade, right? So Ayade hasn't really moved the needle with respect to that, and that local government workers, or at least the welfare of local government workers, has basically been deprioritized. this sort of tallies with a lot of the noises, right? That that you're likely to hear if you sit down and have a conversation with anyone who is either from Cross River or anyone who has Cross River as a focal point in terms of their line of work. That's actually interesting. I just got back from a recent trip, right, to Cross River, and unlike in most other states where you can find perspectives that are either pro the government or critical, right, of the administration, the near unanimous chorus of perspectives on how the outgoing administration has done right in Cross River has been in the negative, which even by Nigerian standards, right, is quite exceptional. So there isn't necessarily so much to say. Cross River is mostly a civil servant state, so really how you treat public sector workers has an outsized effect on other sorts of outcomes right within the state, and it's not exactly clear that there's necessarily much that the new administration can do, save for ensuring that a lot of again what many political watchers see as white elephant projects or projects that are not super important in the larger context of how Cross River is supposed to develop, right? Are deprioritized under the new administration and sort of the bread and butter of governance, plus projects, infrastructure, education, provision of social services, things that actually can improve, right, living outcomes for people, are actually prioritized too. Save for that, I think it's fair to say many Cross Riverians are really, really looking forward to 2019 and a new administration, unfortunately.
Let's go on to WhatsApp. Amy says, can anyone explain why this Maradi train project is prioritized without connecting Abuja to Itakwe or Warri to Port Harcourt? Victor Shone says, does Sharia apply to traffic offenses in countries, in predominantly Muslim countries? Perhaps he should advocate for martial law instead. Now, Victor, that's a lot of sarcasm, isn't it? Jane Itza says, please, who can citizens go to when the road has damaged their cars? Example, potholes that burst the exhaust. I know that FERMA has a website where you can report bad roads, but I don't know that you can report roads to get compensation for your car getting damaged. In some countries that happens, but I don't believe that we have that feature here in Nigeria. Maybe we'll have to look that up, Ayo.
Yeah, indeed, we should.
Okay, and this one is from Dan Okuda. He says, the award of contracts at the twilight of the administration perhaps may be linked to some benefits. Unfortunately, Nigeria has had bad leadership for so many decades.
All right, let's move on to our next story here, and it's from the Vanguard newspaper. Now, residents of Otito Lagba Community Development Association in Igodo, Local Council Development Area, have staged a peaceful protest at the Igodo Undertaking Office of Kekere-Electric in Lagos State. They expressed their grievance over total blackouts in the area for almost a month, while the electricity distribution company kept breaking bills and disconnecting wires. The government said this is a common theme. When will this actually end?
It's not clear, to be very honest, right? I'm reading this story. I think many residents of Lagos can sort of empathize with them. So it has the full range of issues, faulty transformers, aggressive disconnections, customers being billed even though electricity hasn't been provided. And basically what this community, right, in the Gondo Ikotu, has basically said is that, engaging with their local Ikeja Electric undertaking hasn't really moved the needle in terms of service provision in the area. So they took their grievances right to Ikeja Electric headquarters. I should say, and this is by no means a promotional, right, for Ikeja Electric compared to the other discos, and maybe we're comparing bottom pots really at this point. But compared to the other discos, Ikeja Electric is actually not doing badly. There are far worse places and far worse discos that you could be served by. So hopefully the fact that this has gotten into the papers and it's now, making radio, sort of adds more on, right, in the sales of Ikeja Electric officials to actually not only resolve this for this community, but deal with how to sustainably manage and address customer complaints around service provision, right, and in a timely manner. I think that's really all that can be said, right, with respect to the story. All of the larger issues around why the provision of power and electricity is still rocket science, right, in Nigeria, more than 100 years after the first light bulb in this country was lit, right, here in Lagos, is a completely different conversation that we do not have the time for. So let's just park it there for now.
All right, let's go on to some messages. This one is from Ajayi, and he says the sector commander advocating Sharia law to enforce road traffic offences is proof of the continued irrelevance of the FRSC in traffic management in the country. Traffic management should be left to states and local governments. Cisco Delgado says only renewable energy sources can solve the lackadaisical attitude of the discos across the country. And this one is Dami from Ikorodu, who says, another reminder that our law enforcement agents don't exactly know the law that they are supposed to enforce. And that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your messages. And of course, thank you so much, Ikemesit, for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you so very much. It's glad to hang out with you guys again after a while. Thanks, Lagos. Have a great day.
Have a great day and a great weekend ahead. All right, Lagos, last day of Freshly Pressed. But at 8:15, do not